Good morning, Alex and friends. I'm Grace. Today is Monday, March 17th, 2025, and you're listening to Alex's News. The weather in Riverside will be mild today, with a high of 68.5 degrees and a low of 52.2. Coming up on today's show, we'll examine how Trump's recent conversation with Putin could potentially transform the landscape of the ongoing conflict in Ukraine. Then, we'll crack open the mystery behind persistently high egg prices at supermarkets, despite significant drops in wholesale costs. And finally, we'll explore the challenges scientists and engineers face as they work to combine artificial intelligence reasoning capabilities with robotic systems, and why this technological integration hasn't yet lived up to its promise. Stay with us for these stories and more on Alex's News. In our top story this morning, a high-stakes diplomatic call is set to take place tomorrow that could potentially reshape the course of the Ukraine war. President Donald Trump is scheduled to speak with Russian President Vladimir Putin as peace efforts intensify. We're joined now by our international correspondent Ethan Parker with more details. Ethan, what can you tell us about this upcoming call?
Grace, this call could be a potential Putin point in the ongoing conflict. According to ABC News, President Trump and President Putin will speak tomorrow, March 18th, following what Trump has described as significant weekend progress in preparation for the conversation. Trump hinted that we might see an announcement following their talk, telling reporters, "We've done a lot of work over the weekend," which suggests some diplomatic dominoes may be ready to fall.
This comes amid reports of a proposed ceasefire. What exactly would that entail?
That's right, Grace. The diplomatic ceasefire sale emerged from talks in Jeddah, Saudi Arabia. According to Al Jazeera, the proposal includes a 30-day cessation of combat operations along the entire front line, a halt to long-range missile and drone strikes, and stopping operations in the Black Sea. It's worth noting that the U.S. has already lifted its freeze on intelligence sharing and military aid to Ukraine as part of these diplomatic efforts, a significant carrot in these negotiations.
And what specific issues will Trump and Putin be discussing during their call?
According to reporting from ABC News, they'll be focusing on several thorny issues, a real landslide of topics, if you will, as including territorial divisions, power plants, and what Trump described as dividing up certain assets that have already been discussed by both sides. The territorial aspect is particularly complex, given the current battlefield situation. Al Jazeera reports that Russia has been making gains in the Kursk region, which is actually within Russian territory, where Ukrainian forces had launched a cross-border incursion last August.
Can you explain the significance of that Kursk situation for our viewers?
Certainly. That Ukrainian operation was a bold move that temporarily gave Kyiv control over a significant portion of Russian territory, creating what military strategists call a strategic salient, extending from the Ukrainian-Russian border into Kursk Oblast. However, by now, Russian forces have largely regained control over most of this territory, leaving only a small fraction under Ukrainian control. It was essentially Ukraine's attempt to create leverage in any future negotiations, a Kurskiv reminder to Russia of Ukraine's military capabilities.
What are the two sides' positions on potential peace terms?
They remain quite far apart, Grace. According to multiple sources, Putin's conditions are stringent, as he insists Ukraine must be barred from NATO membership and become a neutral country. He also demands Ukrainian troop withdrawal from the regions Russia illegally annexed following its 2022 invasion on Donetsk, Luhansk, Kherson, and Zaporizhia. Meanwhile, Ukrainian President Zelensky remains skeptical. ABC News reports he's accused Putin of prolonging the war and emphasized Ukraine's need to defend itself until Russian forces leave Ukrainian territory.
Has Ukraine shown any flexibility in its position?
There are some signs of pragmatism emerging. A diplomatic source told Perplexity that Ukraine's official stance remains that it will not legally acknowledge any occupied territory as Russian, but there is willingness to consider temporary occupation as part of a broader peace agreement. Zelensky has accepted the proposed 30-day truce, though he remains cautious given Russia's history of violating previous ceasefire agreements.
How are European allies responding to these developments?
With notable caution, Grace, French President Emmanuel Macron has emphasized that Ukraine's sovereignty must be respected, stating it's not Russia's place to decide whether European peacekeeping forces can be deployed in Ukraine. The UK's Prime Minister Keir Starmer has criticized Russia's response to the ceasefire proposal as not good enough. There's clear concern that any Putin pressure could result in Ukraine being forced into unfavorable terms.
Thank you, Ethan, for that comprehensive update on this developing diplomatic situation. We'll certainly be watching closely as that call takes place tomorrow.
My pleasure, Grace. As they say in diplomacy, the proof is in the Putin. We'll see if this call produces any concrete results.
Welcome to our second story of the morning. Egg prices have been a major concern for many households over the past year, but there might be some relief on the horizon. For more on this, we're joined by our consumer affairs reporter, Chloe Parker. Chloe, what's the latest on egg prices?
Thanks, Grace. Some excellent news to report today. According to WUSF's report released today, wholesale egg prices have been on a steady decline since late February. The average cost of large white eggs is now at $4.15 per dozen, which is roughly half what it was just a few weeks ago. ABC News confirms this is the third consecutive week we're seeing wholesale price decreases.
That's certainly welcome news after what we've been through. How high did prices actually get during this crisis?
It was truly extreme, Grace. At the peak of the crisis, some areas saw prices as high as $9 per dozen. Compare that to January 2022, when the average was just $2.17 per dozen. This recent avian influenza outbreak pushed egg prices to a 45-year high, creating what economists quoted by WUSF call a $1.41 billion economic burden on consumers in 2024 alone.
So what's behind this recent drop in wholesale prices?
The main factor is that we haven't seen any major bird flu outbreaks in March, which has allowed the egg supply to begin recovering. As NPR reports, the absence of new outbreaks has given egg producers a chance to rebuild their flocks after devastating losses. The USDA confirms tens of millions of birds have been culled since January 2024, with over 41.4 million birds culled between December 2024 and January 2025 alone.
If wholesale prices are dropping, why aren't we seeing relief at the grocery store yet?
That's the crack in the good news, Grace. Economists explain there's typically a 2 to 3 week lag between wholesale and retail pricing changes. Retailers are still selling eggs they purchased at previous higher prices. According to WUSF's reporting, many retailers are also being cautious about lowering prices too quickly in case another outbreak occurs. Interestingly, many didn't fully pass on the wholesale increases during the height of the crisis either.
With Easter and Passover coming up in just a few weeks, could holiday demand affect this downward trend?
You've hit on a good point there. These holidays traditionally drive up egg demand, which could temporarily slow the price decline. However, experts interviewed by WUSF believe these seasonal factors won't significantly disrupt the overall downward trajectory. They're actually suggesting that decreased consumer demand, driven by previously high prices, could further help lower costs. They're advising against panic buying, which could scramble the market and artificially inflate prices again.
When can consumers realistically expect to see lower prices at their local stores?
According to economists quoted by both WUSF and NPR, we should start seeing retail prices drop in the coming weeks. While we probably won't immediately return to the $2 per dozen level we saw before the crisis, experts are hopeful for a return to the $2 to $3 range by summer 2025, assuming bird flu doesn't resurge and farms successfully recover their flocks.
There have been some allegations of price gouging during this crisis. Is there any merit to those claims?
That's been a hard-boiled debate, Grace. Some consumer advocates have indeed raised concerns about potential price gouging. However, economists remain skeptical of these claims, noting that wholesale prices have generally aligned with bird flu cases and egg production trends. ABC News reports that the U.S. Justice Department has been investigating whether major egg producers leveraged the crisis to raise prices and consolidate market power, though no conclusions have been announced yet.
Thanks for that comprehensive update, Chloe. Let's hope those lower prices make it to our grocery stores soon.
Absolutely, Grace. Consumers could use a break from these shell-shocking prices.
Here are some other headlines. A devastating storm system swept across the Midwest and South over the weekend, leaving at least 18 dead from tornadoes and causing widespread destruction. The outbreak included 14 confirmed tornadoes, with the most severe being an EF3 in Cave City, Arkansas, packing winds of 165 miles per hour. Mississippi was particularly hard hit, with 6 deaths and over 200 people displaced in Tylertown, where entire neighborhoods were destroyed. Missouri reported at least a dozen tornado-related fatalities, while Alabama saw 3 deaths as multiple twisters swept through the state. The severe weather event also triggered deadly dust storms and wildfires. In Kansas, 8 people died in a massive highway pileup, involving at least 50 vehicles caused by a dust storm. Oklahoma reported nearly 400 homes damaged or destroyed by wildfires that killed 2 people. Power outages affected more than 270,000 residents across the affected regions. The White House has announced support for disaster areas, with National Guard troops deployed to Arkansas. President Donald Trump has invoked the 1798 Alien Enemies Act to justify deportations of alleged Venezuelan gang members, sparking legal challenges. A federal judge has temporarily blocked the move, questioning whether a wartime law can be applied during peacetime against criminal groups rather than enemy nations. Historically, the act has only been used during declared wars, including against Japanese Americans in World War II. Critics have called for the repeal of the law, warning of potential misuse of presidential power. U.S. cybersecurity officials have issued warnings about Medusa ransomware attacks that have affected over 300 victims since first appearing in 2021. Operating under a ransomware-as-a-service model, Medusa targets industries including healthcare, education, and manufacturing. The attackers typically gain access through phishing campaigns and unpatched vulnerabilities, using a double extortion model where they encrypt data and threaten to release stolen information if ransoms aren't paid. Officials recommend regular software updates, multi-factor authentication, network segmentation, and maintaining offline backups to mitigate risks. Canada's new Prime Minister Mark Carney is meeting with European allies in Paris and London amid escalating tensions with the Trump administration. The diplomatic effort comes as President Trump imposes tariffs on Canadian goods and has suggested Canada should become the 51st U.S. state. Carney, sworn in on March 14, aims to strengthen economic ties with Europe to reduce Canada's dependence on the U.S., which currently receives over 75% of Canadian exports. Following his European visits, Carney plans to travel to Iqaluit to reaffirm Canada's Arctic sovereignty and is expected to call an election by week's end. In college basketball, Auburn has been named the top overall seed for the 2025 NCAA tournament on Selection Sunday, with Duke, Houston, and Florida securing the other number 1 seeds. The North Carolina Tar Heels were among several bubble teams that managed to secure spots in the tournament, adding excitement to an already unpredictable bracket. Other teams that were on the bubble included Texas, Xavier, San Diego State, and Ohio State, making this year's selection process particularly suspenseful for fans and analysts alike. Now for our third story this morning, we're diving into the cutting-edge world of technology, where AI and robotics are on a collision course. Joining us is our tech correspondent Ethan, with details on the race to create AI-powered robots. Ethan, this sounds like something straight out of science fiction, but it's happening right now, isn't it?
That's right, Grace. We're witnessing what many are calling the physical AI revolution, the ambitious effort to marry advanced AI reasoning models with physical robotic forms. According to VentureBeat, AI has evolved dramatically from being just a statistical prediction tool to becoming a structured problem solver capable of human-like reasoning.
I understand OpenAI has been at the forefront of this evolution. Can you tell us about their latest developments?
Absolutely. In December 2024, OpenAI announced their own 3 series of reasoning models, which incorporate what they call simulated reasoning. Essentially, these models can pause and reflect on their thought processes before responding, much like humans do. According to Perplexity API, the performance metrics are quite impressive. Their O3 mini model makes 39% fewer major mistakes while delivering responses 24% faster and at 63% lower cost than its predecessor.
So these models are getting smarter and more efficient. But how well do they perform in real-world applications?
That's where things get interesting, Grace. These models have shown remarkable strength in STEM domains. The flagship O3 model has achieved outstanding scores on various benchmarks and exams. However, and this is the big however, as of today, March 17, 2025, There's a notable gap between these impressive AI capabilities and their successful integration into physical robots.
So we have smart AI and we have advanced robots. But putting them together is proving challenging?
Precisely. Companies like Tesla, Boston Dynamics, and Agility Robotics are developing humanoid robots designed to reason and adapt to their environments. Perplexity API even reports that researchers have developed AI systems capable of designing robots from scratch in seconds. But searches through the same API reveal no specific information about companies that have successfully implemented OpenAI's advanced reasoning models in commercial robotics systems.
What are the main obstacles standing in the way of this integration?
There are several key challenges. First, there's the safety and control issue. These autonomous reasoning capabilities could introduce risks if not properly aligned with human intent. Second, while these models excel in abstract reasoning and mathematics, their performance in dynamic physical environments remains largely untested. It's one thing to solve equations, but quite another to navigate a crowded room without bumping into problems.
I see what you did there, Ethan. Are there other limitations?
Yes, computational efficiency is a major concern. These advanced reasoning models demand significant processing power, which could limit real-time responsiveness in robotics applications where split-second decisions are crucial. You could say researchers are computing against time to solve these issues.
Looking ahead, what trajectory might this technology take?
Gary Grossman of Edelman, writing for VentureBeat, uses an interesting metaphor of fire to illustrate potential AI futures, a utopian controlled flame scenario with widely distributed benefits, a challenging scenario with uneven benefits, or a dystopian wildfire scenario where AI spirals beyond human control. The path we take will largely depend on how governments, businesses, and researchers approach governance and implementation.
So while the potential is enormous, we're still waiting to see if researchers can successfully bridge the gap between AI reasoning capabilities and physical robotic systems?
Exactly. Despite significant progress in both fields separately, their successful marriage in commercial applications remains more promise than reality as of early 2025. The next few years will be critical in determining whether this technological marriage will be harmonious or if they'll need some relationship counseling.
Thank you, Ethan, for that illuminating report on the cutting edge of AI and robotics. We'll certainly be keeping an eye on these developments as they unfold. That's all we have for now. Today's episode was made by Alexander King with Claude Sonnet 3.7, Gemini Flash 2.0, the Perplexity API, and the Google Cloud Text-to-Speech API. Hope you have a great day. I'll see you tomorrow, Alex.